Andrea, coming to ask you to unmute here.
Okay. So I've just finished all my blocks and I absolutely love this quilt. I just finished all the applique, the borders, everything is done. But I still have PTSD from simply dreaming quilting, and I really don't want to ruin these blocks. Now I have the magnetic hoop, but I did write out to a long armor that I know I see on Facebook, quilting is my bliss. And she would not do it because it would be too much money for her to quilt them individually. So is there a way now I'm just doing fact finding information, but could I follow your instructions, put the quilt together with the sashing into one piece without doing the quilting and then send it off to her to have it quilted? Yeah.
Yes. And for everybody that doesn't know, we're talking about Mel's Practical Joy.
And I absolutely love this quilt. Just it is so happy. I love it. So,
Good. You know what? It is going to get the original is going to go traveling with Shannon. She's actually getting to do quite a lot of um, speech speaking engagements and teaching, and she's going to take the quilt with her and have it hanging behind her so that people can really just get into the whole joy thing so much faster. So let me just pull up a picture of the quilt, and that will help to I can point at things and
I mean, there's still a part of me that wants to quilt it in my machine, but I just don't want to ruin any of the blocks because I just love them so much.
it's going to be really hard to ruin anything. Let me
Um,
just
I'm pretty
let
good at that. I
well,
just
let's have a look and we'll see what you come up, what you decide. So, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Practical Joy quilt. Now, you've added all of the borders onto each of your blocks.
Yes, everything there. I even have all the batting cut out and the backing, but I don't, you know, yes.
Okay, so if you wanted to stitch this up as a single as a whole, just the complete quilt top and then piece it, we've got 1/2 inch sashing between the blocks, right? So that's pretty easy to do. um let me
I would
just
have to trim the blocks like what you suggested.
Yes, you'd have to trim the blocks, so let me just grab the instructions and Practical Joy construction. So this is going to be the trimming instructions. So for each of the blocks, you're still you'll actually have a somewhat easier time of it with the trimming, because as if you'll just be creating sashing with 1 inch wide pieces of fabric, stitching it on with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay.
Okay.
um so you'll want to trim the blocks exactly as specified, so always measuring from the center of the block to the edge in both directions, um at least for the first two sides, and then the second side you can measure from the freshly cut edge, right?
Right.
So trim the blocks exactly as specified. Then you'll want to go into the construction or the assembly, and this will go together pretty much exactly the same with the exception of the sashing. So instead of cutting your pieces to 1/8 of an inch wide, you're going to cut your pieces 1 inch wide, right? Because this 2 1/8 inch wide sashing is so that you can sash the front and the back at the same time. You just want to add sashing on the front.
Oh, okay. So I'm not going to follow the way you have it in that.
No, no, you're simply going to piece the blocks together with 1 inch wide pieces of fabric, which will result in a 1/2 inch sashing by the time you piece it. So you've got a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides and a 1/2 inch in the center, which is why you've got 1 inch. Okay.
Okay.
So 1 inch wide lengths of fabric, and then you'll be able to cut them the same length here, right? So
Right.
join number 14 is going to be 71 1/4 inches by 1 inch. So anytime you see 2 1/8, rewrite that as 1 inch.
Okay.
Okay. So then you'll have all of your joining strips. And to join two blocks, you're not going to do any of this. You're literally going to take your two blocks that you want to join together, stitch your piece of sashing to one side with your 1/4 inch seam, and then stitch it to the other side with your 1/4 inch seam. Now, the two blocks are going to meet in the middle at the back, right? Because
Yes.
you've just got a 1/2 inch wide piece of sashing on the front. So as long as you, and you can literally ignore all of this, as long as you start here, so join number 1 is these two blocks here. So you're just going to stitch those two together. You don't even need to trim them. They should automatically measure that amount. When you are doing the sashing, when you're joining quilted blocks, what I found was that you could gain a little tiny bit every time you had a join, right? So your blocks should automatically wind up at that, assuming you've got good 1/4 inch seam. So that's your first join. Your second join is going to be this one here. So just follow
Yeah.
all the way through to the end. And eventually, let's see, eventually you'll end up with, we haven't got there just yet. You'll end up with the two pieces and that one last join. So that's your join 14 there. So at that point, you've now got your completed quilt top, right?
Right.
But you're literally quilt top only. There's no batting involved. There's no backing involved. Now, your long arm quilter would more than likely be totally delighted to quilt that. I'm thinking
Yes.
they would more than that. They're definitely going to want a single piece of batting and probably a single piece of backing fabric as well.
Yes.
If
She likes to use wool to make the custom show up, and she would definitely not go over any of the applique shapes. Um,
Yeah, well, there's no way that you're going to be anybody's going to be quilting through the applique shapes, I
uh,
don't think. But yeah, wool batting, I love wool batting if I'm doing free motion quilting on a domestic machine or a long arm machine. Wool batting, this will look stunning.
yeah.
It'll give a little trapunto like effect.
Right. But on the flip side, if I was to do this myself, because I really want to try, because I do, your process is very hard, but when I finish it, I've learned a lot, and you learn your embroidery machine inside and out. I mean, so when you're doing the smaller blocks, because the dime hoop is so big, am I going to have to add fabric to some of the smaller blocks so my dime hoop fits, or?
Which machine do you have?
I have the 880 plus.
Okay. So which hoops do you have?
I was going to use the dime magnetic hoop for the quilting part. The mega one, whatever it's called, the
So
large
you got
one.
the biggest one, the jumbo hoop
Yeah,
size? Okay. So what I actually suggest is having four pieces of scrap fabric that are 4 to 6 inches wide that you absolutely don't care about, right?
right,
And when you have the smaller blocks, let me just share my screen again. So, or actually for any of the blocks, whenever you're quilting any of the blocks, so that you minimize the amount of batting and backing fabric, let this guy here, this little one here, I think is the smallest of all of the blocks. So even if you're quilting this one, which is the biggest of the blocks, to make it easy to get up to the edges, if you based your strips of fabric on all four sides of the block that you're going to be quilting, that will, and baste it to the backing fabric, that will extend your backing fabric so that you can guarantee that you get everything in in the hoop, right?
right.
And you can just rip it off and reuse it for each of the blocks.
Okay, so I probably would have done it on the actual block, so that's good to know that I would do it on the backing fabric, the additional
Well,
sizes. That makes
even
sense now.
yeah, even with the so once you've finished each of these blocks, they're a little bit supersized to give you some leeway with the trimming, but the batting and the backing fabric are always going to be the biggest part of the equation, right? So let's
Right,
say your
yes.
batting and backing fabric are this big, and the quilt top is going to be a little bit smaller. Now, I try and save as much fabric as possible, so it might only be a couple of inches smaller, which is why if you base the scraps onto the backing fabric, then that's going to maximize your space.
Yeah, that makes sense. Very good idea. I never would have thought of that. That really good idea. So,
Yeah, whenever you're quilting in the hoop and you're getting up to the edge of the design, you can just use a scrap piece to extend your piece of fabric. I don't know if you can hear that, but we have a rainstorm going on outside and a helicopter is flying right over the house. Don't know if that's going to be picked up on the microphone or not, but that got really loud just then. Now,
okay, I have a lot to think about because I do think I could do your idea with the 1 inch sashing after I trim them. I think that would be very doable for me. So, um,
jump into the Facebook group and ask people about their experience of quilting in the hoop. I know that when you first try it, it seems like it takes an age to get everything situated and get the design aligned. I can guarantee you that once you've done it a few times, it gets easier every single time. And it's almost like everybody has a light bulb moment. Some people it happens after the second or third time of trying it. Some people it takes 10 or 12 or even 20 times of doing it. But everybody has that light bulb moment when you finally figure out, you know what, this is actually really easy.
yeah, because I have everything cut out. The backings are all cut out, the batting and,
So
so,
start with the littlest block first.
okay.
And then if you know, if something goes horribly wrong, and I highly doubt that it will, it's not going to be such a big deal.
Okay. I'll think about it. So yeah. Thank you though. It gives me a lot to think about.
You're welcome.
A
You
lot of
definitely got
options.
lots
Thank
of
you.
options.
Yes, lots of options. That's what I love. So thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me know how you get on.
Okay, I will.
Okay.